Welcome to the Marvelous Designer Basic Garment Tutorials. In this tutorial, we are going to create a mock turtleneck knit shirt that will have a graphic applied and quilting. To make it easier to follow along with the lesson, please reset your user settings or make sure your mouse presets are on the 3-button or regular mouse. If you do not know how to change your settings, please watch our UI video first. For those using Marvelous Designer 9.5 and above, we have grouped more tools together for a cleaner user interface. Please long press the left mouse button on the tool to view a list of all of the tools in the tool group. So to begin, we are going to start by opening up our block shirt by going to File, Open, Garment, and I am selecting the women's shirt. As always, you can choose your block garment that fits your avatar. Once I have imported my shirt, I can also choose my avatar that this fits. Going to Library, Avatar, Female B, because this does fit my female B. It may be different for you. And then choosing the female avatar, and selecting Yes, Avatar to Avatar Pose and Size. Once she is in the workspace, I am going to quickly clean up the center front of my garment here. For this lesson, I do not need the baselines in the front and the back, so I'm going to use the Trace tool to select those baselines and delete them just using the Delete or the Backspace key. Once I've cleaned up my pattern, I'm going to go ahead and start creating this long sleeve turtleneck shirt. So what we need to do is add a collar and lengthen the sleeves. To start, we're going to lengthen the sleeves. I'm going to move my back out of the way in the 2D window, and I'm going to lengthen my sleeve hem by using the Edit Pattern tool. Just selecting the hem and pulling it down, holding Shift to make sure I don't move it too much out of the way. Now if you look in the 3D window, if we simulate, this will collide with her arms. So to prevent that from happening, I'm just selecting that sleeve, moving it out of the way, going to the avatar display options, and turning on the show arrangement points. Then, while that sleeve is still selected, I'm just placing it on the arm. We can see here that the sleeve is too long. So for me, I just need to shorten that cuff a little bit more. For you, you might not have to. And then placing it again, and that looks like it's going to fit a lot better. So we can see how that's going to fit with simulation. Now that it's placed on her arms, it does look a lot better, though the cuff is a little wide. So all we need to do is just move those segment points further in. And simulate again, and that narrows the sleeve. If you do not want the curve at the cuff, you can easily adjust this by right-clicking that segment line and choosing Delete All Curve Points, which will straighten out that cuff. Once you are happy with the basic block fit of your sleeves, we're going to go ahead and move on to creating our collar. This is going to be a mock turtleneck, so we don't have a fold at the top. Looking at this shirt, we do want to add a little bit to the height in the center front on the neck. So going to the center front pattern piece, selecting that center front segment point, we can just raise that. And then, because we've raised it, it has changed the slope of the neckline. We can fix that using the Edit Curvature tool or the C hotkey. And just moving that and fixing that curve so it's a nice, clean, smooth slope. Once we've done that, we can use the Edit Pattern tool to measure our neckline. Selecting the Edit Pattern tool, I can choose the front and the back, and I get, from my pattern, I get 193.7. I'm going to create a rectangle of that same measurement, going up to the pattern tools, long pressing and choosing the rectangle tool, and inputting that measurement, 193.7, and making the height 40 millimeters. You can make your height whatever you want, just make sure your width is around the same as your collar. It doesn't have to be perfect because it will need to be smaller in a minute. Once you've input those measurements, select OK. And going back over to the Edit Pattern tool, We're going to unfold this by right-clicking and choosing Unfold, because now it is the full circumference of that neck. Next, we are going to sew it in place using the free sewing tool, or the M hotkey, just selecting the entire bottom of that collar. And here you can start on the shoulder or you can start on the center back. Just remember the order that you started in, holding Shift to select the fronts and the backs, and letting go, and then sewing the collar closed. Again, we are going to use the arrangement points. Swap over to the Transform Pattern tool, selecting the collar, and we can place it on her neck. Before you simulate, double check that the collar is not twisted and the sewing is not twisted either. Once you've done that, go ahead and simulate. And you can see here that the collar is a little big on the upper half. This is normal to expect of this shape, because normally a collar is going to be smaller than the actual neckline. So you can easily fix this just by making it just a little smaller, not too small, because we are going to be shrinking all of our patterns after this. So you can see here, once you've narrowed it just a little bit, we then get the base fit of this non-stretched block turtleneck shirt. Once you have finished your collar and your sleeves, we are going to shrink all of these pieces on the left. To do this, we are going to the Property Editor, go down to Simulation Properties, and we can see Shrinkage Weft and Warp. So this applies to all of your pattern pieces that you've selected. So Weft is going to be left and right, and Warp is going to be up and down. These terms come from garment industry terms, so if it helps, I like to remember Weft is left. So I'm going to select all of my pattern pieces, making sure that they are all going up and down. So I have the part that I want to shrink around the waist, around the neck. They're all going in the correct direction to fit with the shrinkage of weft. And we are going to change the shrinkage to 80%. You can see in the 3D window it applies that shrinkage. Make sure simulation is on. If it's not, take a look and see how it looks. If you like that, then we can move forward. Now that we've created our fitted shirt, let's go ahead and change her pose to put her arms at her sides. By going to the library, you should still be on your avatar. If not, make sure to go to the avatar you've selected. I'm choosing the pose file, and I'm choosing the attention pose. Pose only. And then I can close my library, and I can check the fit of this shirt. Because it is tight, feel free to pull at it until it fits appropriately. And looks like it fits pretty good. So I'm going to turn off simulation. And now we can get started making our design on our shirt. So for this shirt, I'm going to be doing quilting on the shoulder with top stitching, as well as some color blocking on the arms and just on the front. So to do that, I'm going up to the toolbar, selecting the internal tools, long pressing and choosing the internal polygon tool, or you can use the G hotkey. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw in the 2D window. If you want, you can draw in the 3D window using the Line 3D Pattern tool, but I'm just going to do it here in the 2D window. And I'm going to start designing. Create a line and hitting enter to finish. It's going to appear on my avatar. It's going to appear on my avatar and I can see how I like it. Let's put it on the back as well, because I'm doing a quilted shoulder look. Hitting enter to finish. Pretty good. I do want to move this down a bit. And right-clicking it, I'm just going to extend and add a point to the outline. There we go. And I think the front's a little low, so I can just fix that by moving it upwards. I like my shoulders, so I'm going to move on to the sleeves and the waist. Going back to the internal line tool, I'm just going to do, while holding Control to create a curve, just a small panel in the front and hitting Enter to finish my internal line. And then I'll do a slope on the sleeve as well. I'm going to right click and just convert that point into a curve point, so I get that nice slope. Once you are done designing your internal lines for color blocking, go ahead and select all of those internal lines holding Shift, and then once they are selected, right click and choose Cut and Sew. This will split all of them at the same time and we will have our pieces. If you are following along with my design, we are going to go ahead and move on to the quilting texture, which utilizes pressure. To do this, I am going to go over to the Edit Sewing tool, select that shoulder seam. I'm choosing it on the back here. I'm right-clicking that, and I'm choosing Merge. This will bring both pattern pieces over and merge them at the same time. Then I can clean this up using the Trace tool, select those baselines, and just delete them. And now I have a singular shoulder piece. From here, I can create my quilted look. So I can just use the Edit Pattern tool, and I want this to be pretty consistent between these two segment lines. So I'm just selecting my segment lines, right-clicking, and choosing Offset as internal line along a curve. We have used this before for creating pleats, and we can use this here to create quilting as well. So I can create more than one offset, I can create as many as I want, but I think I do want to stick with 5. And you can do as many as you want. You can also do it in the other direction, and it'll be curved. So I'm selecting 5, choosing OK. And I can see how this looks on my avatar. If I'm happy with this, which I am, I'm going to move forward and create that quilting look using pressure. To do this, I'm using the Transform Pattern tool, selecting those two shoulder pieces, right-clicking them, and choosing Layer Clone Over. You can do under if you want, but you'd have to move it under. The only reason I'm choosing over is because I have space above this pattern. Choosing over, so I remember where they are. And for the layer above, I'm going to be applying pressure. So for the upper layer, positive pressure, and for the lower layer, negative pressure of the same value. So I'm doing 5, you can do 10 if you want. It's really up to you and how the look you want it to be. And the reason that we have applied these internal lines first before doing layer clone is because it is one less step. Let me move this out of the way. You can see all of those internal lines now have a sewing relationship. So it makes it a little easier. Bringing that back. Once you've done that and you've applied your pressure, go ahead and simulate. Now when you simulate, you may notice that you can't really see your quilting. Don't worry, it's because if you select your shoulder pieces, it's because your particle distance is 20. If we bring this down to 5, hitting enter and simulating again, now you can see your quilting. We will be applying some top stitching inside of these lines, but first of all, let's go ahead and create that color blocking look so we can decide on the colors first. Turning off simulation. I'm opening the library tab, going to fabric, and I do know that I want this to be a knit, so I'm going to type in the word knit and hit enter, and it brings up all the knits. So I have cotton jersey, rayon, terry. So look at the knits, decide what you want. I don't want anything that's going to be shiny, so I'm going to choose the cotton jersey, clicking and dragging over into the object browser and letting go of that in the fabric window. That brings my fabric into my object browser. And I'm going to close my library tab. And now I can start creating my fabrics. I know I want color blocking, so I want 2 of the same. So I'm going to choose copy while selecting the cotton jersey fabric. And now I can start editing this. You can choose whichever colors you want. I'm going to go ahead and go with a dark red and a dark gray. So while I've selected one of my cottons, I can go down to Material, Front, and I can go down to Color, double click that, and I'll make this one the dark gray first. We can do black, but sometimes it doesn't show as well. So I'm just doing a darker gray. Selecting OK. And I'm going to do the same with the above one, but I'm going to choose a dark red. You can choose whatever colors you want and however many that you want. Once you've selected your fabrics and your colors, and you've finished that, we can go ahead and start creating our color blocking. So I'm going to zoom out a bit. And here you can drag and drop, like this, onto the avatar in the 2D or the 3D window. Or you can select your pattern pieces and choose the Assign button. So go ahead and apply your color blocking however you like. Until you have completely filled your garment with color. Once that is done, we can make some adjustments to the actual fabric if we want, and we can apply a graphic as well. Going up to the toolbar, we have the Edit Texture tool, the Transform Graphic, and the Graphic tool. This is the Edit Graphic tool, which we'll be using in a minute, but we can choose the Edit Texture tool, so I can select my fabric, and if I think the scale of this texture is too small, I can actually choose this directional diagonal line and increase the scale of this texture. I can rotate it if I want, and that does not affect the grain. But I'm going to rotate that back using Control Z. I do not recommend adjusting the grain, which is this line here, because it will change how this actually stretches. Because remember, we shrink it on the left. So if we turn this grain, it's going to shrink perpendicular to this up and down arrow. So for now, don't touch this. If you want to increase the scale, use this gizmo up here. And we're going to do the same with the other color, just so we get more of a textured look. So it's a thicker, chunkier knit. Really, it's up to you at this point. And once you've done that, and you're happy with how your actual garment looks, we can apply a graphic. So, selecting the Graphic 3D Pattern tool, I already have some logos here. I'm going to use the Marvelous Designer logo from the Mac application. You can choose any image that you want, any JPEG. Feel free. I'm just going to select the Marvelous Designer logo, and I can select anywhere on here on my avatar in my pattern pieces that I want to place it. So I'm just going to place it above her chest. It's going to tell me the measurement. It's going to be way too big. We'll see in a second when I select OK. And it appears in my 2D workspace. So we can see here, this is a very large logo. So swapping over to the Transform Graphic, I can just select it. And the same thing, diagonal shrinks it, and the circle rotates it. I'm just going to make it like a sci-fi Marvelous Designer logo. There we are. And I'm happy with its location. Once you've applied that graphic, we can do the last thing, which is adding our top stitching. So if we look, I'm going to zoom in on the shoulder, and I'm going to turn off the internal lines. We can see here, normally you would have some stitching here. And I want to apply that stitching using the top stitch tools, which we can go to top stitching in our object browser. It's It's a tab with the buttonhole and fabric. So I'm going to select top stitch, double click that to bring it up in the property editor, and then we can check our tools. We have the edit top stitch tool, and it's very similar to the sewing tools. So we have the segment top stitch, free top stitch, and we can toggle top stitch on and off to see it or not. So let's apply the top stitch, remembering that it is only going to be applied to the top layer of our quilting. So using the segment top stitch, I'm just going to apply it to all of those internal lines. Currently I'm using the default top stitch, so you may notice that it's not actually in the puff or in the stitched in the ditch like we want. So we can change this by going to the default top stitch, double clicking, and opening that property editor. After the name, we have the offset. So right here, it is 3.2 millimeters offset, and we want that to become 0. Hitting enter. It's changed all of these to 0, so now they are on the line. But because they are on the line, they're a little hidden, so we're going to play with this to fix it. I'm going to make the thickness 1, hitting enter. It's really thick now, and we can definitely see them, but they look a little weird. So let's change the length as well. I'm going to make the length 2, see how that looks. It's a little better, but not quite there. Let's try it on 3. That looks a little bit more accurate to real life if we zoom out from her shoulder, just so we can see that we have quilting there. Once it looks how you like, I'm going to leave it with the length at 3 and the thickness at 1. We can go down to material and color, and we can use the eyedrop to just select one of the reds. I'm going to make it a little brighter just so we can see it. It's never going to be perfect, so that's fine, because now I can zoom out and I can see my top stitching from here. Once this is done, we can now start adjusting this garment on our avatar. So turning simulation on, you will notice that your top stitching disappears. Don't worry, it's still there. Turning simulation off, the top stitching will appear. So what we're going to do is, we definitely know this shirt's never going to stay in place in real life. So let's pull this up so we get some wrinkles. And don't worry, this is all currently at 20 particle distance. So once you've pulled this up and started creating your wrinkles, we can stair step our particle distance down. Selecting Control A, and we're going to bring the particle distance down to 10. Simulating, and we can see that the quality of the wrinkles are improving as we are bringing the particle distance down. And then Control A again, and we'll bring this down to 5. And simulate one more time. And now the wrinkles are a lot more natural along her waist, because a knitted shirt would ride up if it's tight on the waist. So feel free to pull at it and adjust. And let it settle. Now you will notice, because we have done the shrinkage weft, that our shoulder here is rippling. This is because we are down to 5 particle distance, and it's an uneven slightly. So the measurements aren't sewing in together perfectly. This is fine and easy to fix using the seam taping tool. We can use seam taping similar to how we did on the dress, and just apply it by clicking to those seams that need to be stabilized. You can also apply it to the shoulder if it is rippling more than you want, just like that. And if we simulate again, If we simulate again, our seam will become much smoother. And once you are done adjusting your shirt, let's go ahead and save this as a garment, turning off simulation. We are going to use this shirt for the next 2 lessons, so make sure that you are happy with how this looks. Going up to File, Save As, Garment. Going to the basic garment tutorials, I'm saving this as Finished Garment. And I'm going to save this as Logo Knit Shirt. Once you've named it, go ahead and save. And that is it for this knit shirt tutorial. Thank you for watching, and follow the links here to the next lessons. If you liked this video, hit the like button below and subscribe for more. If you have any questions about getting started in Marvelous Designer or this lesson, please leave a comment below and we will do our best to answer your questions. If you want more information on Marvelous Designer, check out our website, forum, and official Discord channels, which are all linked in the description box below.